You're watching Force 13's live streaming service.
Good afternoon, morning, wherever you may be on this planet we call Earth. Of course, the main headline across the world of weather today, regarding tropical cyclones that is of course Cyclone Zelia, which is explosively intensifying as it moves, or I really should say moving, as it is currently stationary off the west coast of Australia right now with our estimated winds compared to the JTWC's advisory of 100 miles per hour, their latest one, which is absolutely ridiculously low. We've gone with 150 miles per hour and a pressure of 934 millibars. That is yes, that is a wind speed 50 miles per hour higher than the official estimate, but trust me, a wind speed that high is well warranted considering the satellite appearance with an eye temperature that has just reached the positives in terms of degrees. So I am now joined by my only person with me, which is Zeta, joining me from the Midwest region of the United States. What do you think of this dangerous storm as it pushes off towards the south here? Or really stationary, I should say.
It's honestly like giving me like a couple flashbacks to Milton. Like the eyes of both storms look really similar. And I very strongly fear that this is going to intensify even further than what it is right now.
It probably is, and the JTWC, believe it or not, they did issue a new warning at 21Z, which is about 3 hours ago, and they were only forecasting winds of 145 miles per hour, and they had to actually update their forecast to now include a wind speed at peak of 165 miles per hour, so they had to obviously bump that up a little bit. I will pull up the latest Joint Typhoon Warning Center's forecast cone. They have just amended it in the past hour or so, and here it is. You can see they do forecast wind speeds of 145 knots or 165 miles per hour in about 18 hours from now. Obviously, I think it's going to reach that wind speed a lot sooner than that. And a terrible initial forecast intensity of 85 knots, 100 miles per hour. That is absolutely ridiculous. That is absolutely appalling that they've gone that low for a storm of this intensity and this appearance. This is a dangerous storm, and it poses a really significant risk to portions off towards its south, including the town of Port Hedland.
I've got the HAFS-A model pulled up on Tropical Tidbits.
We'll have a look at that here in just a minute. I do know that the Bureau of Meteorology is expected to do a intermediate or a full update anytime now, so I will get the latest on that from them. In the meantime, let's see what they are saying. I don't have the advisory that's due now, but I do have the 18Z advisory, or the 21Z one. And of course, they were saying Category 4 on the Australian scale, which is pretty similar to what we have now. There's their forecast track with a cyclone warning in the orange areas, which is likely to watch in the lightly orange areas, tending farther inland towards Nulagine, Karatha, Port Hedland in the warning area, extending over to Bidyadanga. I apologize if I pronounced the name of those towns incorrectly. But of course, Category 4 on the Australian scale, Category 4 on the Safford-Simpson scale, forecast to reach Category 5 on both scales very shortly, if not already on the Australian scale. If we're going by our analysis, it absolutely is a Category 5 right now on the Safford-Simpson wind scale.
Mm-hmm.
So a dangerous situation right now, and Zeta, I see you've got the HAFS model run up, and I do have to say that this is probably a extreme case, or
Mm-hmm.
oh, no, okay, that's
149 knots.
That's not bad actually.
That's definitely within the realms of possibility. Let's see what else we've got. Thought they discontinued Hworth. Hworth is forecasting only 121 knots. Well past that now.
Yeah, obviously it's a pretty severe situation that we have ongoing with basically a borderline Category 5 on the Safford-Simpson scale, bearing right down on Port Hedland. Now, I do have to say the landfall location and timing is both a little bit uncertain. So you've got the Bureau of Meteorology, which is forecasting a landfall in about 36 hours from now, right over or very close to Port Hedland. And then you have the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, which thinks that it might be a little bit later than that. So there is still some uncertainty as to the landfall timing of this storm, and the landfall timing is going to have a great deal of uncertainty with it regarding the location as well, because you can see the Bureau has it going right in here near Port Hedland. Meanwhile, the TWC is a little bit farther off towards the southwest.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little bit of uncertainty with that, and then of course, you've always got the usual uncertainties with eye wall replacement cycles that might happen with these kind of things. That kind of thing happens all the time with these kind of things.
I mean, like with Otis, we didn't see any eye wall replacement cycles with that, didn't we?
Well, Otis was sort of a different situation. Otis was basically it explosively intensified and it made landfall. This is explosively intensifying, and it has a day or so at least until landfall. So it's got a little while to go.
It's stalling a bit.
That's not to say that the storm hasn't been flourishing in its environment, that it has to its advantage. I mean, just look at these satellite appearance. I mean, that for itself just speaks to me that this storm is really intense. And you can see the poleward outflow of the storm has gotten a lot more intense as we zoom out here on the wide shot. And this is clearly an indication of the storm sort of breathing out even more. It's able to breathe more, it's able to relax itself more, and it's able to take advantage of those conditions a lot more. And this is certainly not what we were going to be seeing for these locations.
Yeah. Any ideas on if upwelling would be able to weaken the storm a little bit or slow the intensification rate?
I do know that upwelling might be an issue in these areas, given that the storm is moving over the stable waters. It's kind of just moving very slowly. But I do think that ocean heat content is pretty deep in this area, as well as the sea temperatures are pretty high. We'll get to the sea temperatures here in just a second. We did have somebody ask, is Zelia going to likely make landfall as a Category 5? I would say at this point, unfortunately, yes, regarding all data that we have. Although I would not be surprised to see the forecast intensity maybe toned down a little bit. Once we get those eye wall replacement cycles going, we have a better idea of how the structure of the storm might look. In about maybe 12 hours from now, we'll have a much better idea of landfall location and intensity, and our confidence in both of those is only going to go up with time.
I think you said Talia instead of Zelia.
I apologize.
You're fine.
We'll go over to the Force City website here, which you can go to yourself, by the way, at force-13.com/satellite. We have a lot of products available to track the storms right now, and here is the season temperature product. Oh boy, it's under a very warm water. It's got some very warm waters underneath it, 31 to 32 degrees Celsius. So that's not going to hinder the storm at all. That's only going to help it even more.
Quite literally a hot tub over there right now.
And I don't think that the website has ocean heat content, unfortunately. So that's unfortunate. But if you do have any comments or questions, you can send those down to the comment section down below. Be sure to tag us at Force13, and it'll light up nice and bright and orange for us to read out.
Do you know if Tropical Tidbits has a oceanic heat content map?
It wouldn't surprise me.
I'm looking for ocean analysis, not seeing anything.
Now, I'm not seeing anything from the Bureau of Meteorology yet. We are due to get an update from them anytime now. So they're due to update but at 0Z. So I'm not seeing their update just yet. But when I see it, I will let you all know. Now, we are expected to get a new ATCF fix, which will be the Joint Typhoon Warning Center's advisory. That will be coming out at top of the hour, if not sooner. They will not be issuing a full forecast advisory. That won't happen until after the stream ends.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, Zelia, I don't know, my bad on the pronunciation of the storm's names, is
I just say Zelia.
explosively intensifying off the west coast of Australia. That's about all you can really say at this point. Moving very slowly, at times stationary even, off the west coast of Australia, poses a very significant risk to portions off towards the south, including Port Hedland, where landfall is likely around a day and a half to maybe 2 days away. We don't really know on the exact landfall timing, unfortunately. There is still a little bit of uncertainty with that, as well as the landfall intensity. It's still all up in the air, and we'll have a much better idea on those two aspects of things in about 12 hours from now.
I put the Tropical Cyclone Advice number 27 in the live output channel.
Is that the latest one?
Yes it is.
When did that come out?
5:51 a.m. WST on Thursday, 13 February 2025. Check live output.
That was about 3 hours ago. Or no, 2 hours ago. I apologize. We'll get to that here in just a second, though. Question here. Any new AOIs near the southern Indian Ocean? We don't have any other areas of interest at the moment. The only other area of interest that I would mark around the world would probably be a 10% for a new frontal event that's going to happen in the South Pacific near and east of Fiji. That would be the only thing that I would be marking right now. Of course, we also do have Invest 93W in the South China Sea. That's not really going to do anything. It's going to just fizzle out in the area. And of course, we also do have Cyclone Ilsa, which is, there it is, looking very horrible.
It has course, like one last shot.
Of course, then again, it's never really looked quote-unquote good in any part of its life, and is heading off towards the poles now, where it will ultimately die and end its life. Thankfully, far away from many land areas, and its tag team partner that it had, Vince, which, by the way, probably was a Category 5 on the Safford-Simpson scale, that's long gone now, too. So if this storm does become a Category 5, it would surprise me if it actually doesn't. Will be Category 5 number 2 for 2025 already. And here we are, only basically a month and a half in.
Pretty much. Zelia did look pretty good at the start of its life, I will say. But it did. Quickly... died.
Right. Reading the latest tropical cyclone advice from the Bureau of Meteorology. Bear with me here, it's quite a lot. They say that Zelia intensifying and slow moving north of Port Hedland to bring very destructive winds and very heavy rain to the Pilbara coast. Right now, cyclone warnings in effect from Bidyangunga. I my bad on the pronunciation of that once again, to Dampier, including Port Hedland, Karatha, and Dampier, and extending inland to Marble Bar. I'll pull up that graphic, that way I can illustrate what I'm saying. The cyclone watch zone, outlined in this brighter orange area, is from Dampier to Mardi, including inland areas up towards Nullagine. Right now, intensity-wise, the Bureau of Meteorology has a Category 4 on the Australian scale, sustained winds near the center of 175 kilometers per hour. That's about 105, 110 miles per hour, and 10-minute sustained winds, with gusts up to 250 kilometers per hour. Location, as of 2 hours ago, per the Bureau, within 20 kilometers of 19.1 degrees south, 118.2 degrees east, estimated to be 140 kilometers north-northwest of Port Hedland, and 230 kilometers northeast of Karatha. Moving west at 6 kilometers per hour. This is their discussion here. It's a small one, but brief. Zelia, Category 4, is intensifying rapidly and now expected to reach Category 5 intensity today, and it's expected to remain slow-moving to the north of Port Hedland today before moving towards the coast on Friday. Zelia is forecast to bring destructive wind gusts to communities on the Pilbara coast from as early as Thursday night and more likely Friday as Zelia nears the coast. The very destructive inner core of the cyclone will most likely cross the coast between Wim Creek and De Grey, including Port Hedland, on Friday afternoon or night, although a later crossing for the west cannot be ruled out. That's what the DHWC is forecasting. Heavy rainfall is expected on the coast in the next couple of days, and falls will be locally intense in the center of the cyclone as it crosses the coast. I don't know if you want to go over the hazards there, Zeta.
We have gales with damaging wind gusts to 120 kilometers per hour are developing near the coastal fringe between De Grey and Wim Creek, including Port Hedland. During Thursday, these may extend to other areas along the coast between Bidyadanga and Dampier, including Karatha. These damaging wind gusts may extend west to Mardi during Friday if the system moves further west. Damaging wind gusts to 120 kilometers per hour may also extend inland to Marble Bar and Nullagine during Friday. Destructive wind gusts of up to 160 kilometers per hour may develop between Wim Creek and Wall Downs, including Port Hedland later Thursday as Zelia moves closer to the coast. Alternatively, destructive wind gusts may be delayed until Friday and occur between De Grey and Mardi, including Karatha, Dampier, and Port Hedland, if the system remains off the coast and moves further west. Very destructive wind gusts of up to 290 kilometers per hour are likely to close the center of the cyclones across the coast. Heavy to locally intense rainfall, which may lead to flash flooding, is likely overnight and during Thursday across coastal and adjacent inland areas between Wim Creek and Wall Downs. Otherwise isolated heavy rainfall is forecast along the coast between Bidyadanga and Dampier. I have no idea how to pronounce any of these names, and extending inland to Nullagine during Thursday. A flood watch is also in effect for catchments in the Pilbara and western Kimberley. Residents between Karatha and Bidyadanga, including Port Hedland, are specifically warned of the potential of a dangerous storm tide as the cyclone center crosses the coast. Tides are likely to rise significantly above the normal high tide mark, with damaging waves and dangerous flooding of some low-lying areas close to the shoreline. Ensure you know what to do in a cyclone. For the latest DFES community alerts and warnings, visit www.emergency.wa.gov.au or download the Emergency Western Australia app. The next advice will be issued by 9 a.m. AWST, Thursday, 13 February.
Thank you, Zeta. I appreciate that. Of course, the system is extremely dangerous, and it would not surprise me if the Bureau, on their next forecast advisory, whether it be intermediate or whatever, if they do call the system a Category 5 on the Australian scale. Certainly appears that way on satellite imagery right now, with an eye temperature, I believe, in the positives. I'll have a look here real quick at the eye temperature. Just give me just a minute. I am pulling it up on an external website that will give me an exact value. Latest eye temperature that I'm seeing looks to be maybe around negative 14 degrees Celsius. I believe it was almost in the positives just before we started our stream, so it's sort of hovering around those frames. of maybe single digits negatives around there. So the eye is trying to warm at times.
The stream does have a bit of delay.
And the storm is trying to intensify. Although it remains to be seen if the intensification rate that we've been seeing today will continue. What's to say that the intensification rate, now that it has this appearance, might slow down a little bit?
Mm-hmm. I was going to say something, but I forgot.
Looking at radar here, I'll pull up the radar from a courtesy of the application Radar Scope, which is a U.S. software that has access to the Australian radars. You can quite clearly make out the eye. We'll get the eye diameter here.
It's barely moving at all, as you can see.
Maybe around 16, 15 miles wide, roughly. And you can see it's not really moving very much.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much all the pixels are pretty much just staying in place.
And still, of course, if anyone's wondering, no sign on microwave imagery or this for any eye wall replacement cycle just yet. Let's hope that it does come. I do realize that eye wall replacement cycles are a double-edged sword that would expand the wind field, but it would definitely reduce the wind field threat. And I believe that the wind is probably the biggest threat with this storm as it pushes off towards the coast here. Latest distances from Port Hedland. Of course, you heard the Bureau saying it's probably around 95 miles to the north-northwest of Port Hedland as it stands right now. And from Karratha, farther off towards the southwest of the storm, it's around 150 miles away.
I do also want to state that I believe the storm has been undergoing a jet interaction for pretty much the entirety of its life.
I believe there is somewhat of a jet interaction ongoing regarding this storm, but if it's amounting to anything significant, I don't really know.
Yeah, that's all.
So once again, if you do have any comments or questions, you can send those down to the comment section down below. We'll answer those in due course. Latest microwave imagery is suggesting that there is an eye wall replacement cycle trying to form. It just came in here. I'll pull it up here on the stream if I can. Right, here it is. It's a little bit zoomed in, so I do apologize, but there is the eye of the storm. It's got a big break in the southern side. That's going to certainly help the storm out a little bit, or help go in our favor, I should say. But it does appear that this was at about maybe an hour ago. Maybe about an hour and a half ago. So, has the storm repaired itself since then on the southern side? Remains to be seen. Another question here, is Zelia merging with a front? I don't think so.
Yeah, definitely not. It might look like it's attached to a front, but that's just a jet.
Yeah. Of course, whenever you zoom out on the satellite imagery of things, you can see that it does have a front or something attached to it, but that's more so associated with this large ex-tropical cyclone to the south of Australia, and that's only adding to the energy of the storm. It's allowing this storm to breathe even more, and it's just allowing this storm to intensify further.
Maury has joined us.
Yes, we're also now joined by Maury. Hello.
He's muted at the minute.
We'll get the opinion on Maury here in just a few minutes. But if you do have any comments or questions, you can send those down to the comment section down below. Be sure to tag us at Force13. It'll light up nice and bright and orange for me. I appreciate that in advance. Still waiting on the latest advisory from the Bureau of Meteorology. We'll go to the GFS model run here for the Australian cyclone. and we'll have a look at the total accumulated precipitation. Obviously, this is one model run, so don't take this at face value, but this is a generalized idea of what we're going to be seeing regarding the rainfall threat for this storm. So you can see there, GFS model run does take the storm off towards the north a little bit, probably being relatively stationary at times, and then it moves off towards the south. And we might see heavy rainfall up to 300, 400 millimeters in the immediate coastal areas. But then, of course, you still got a significant rainfall threat that sends inland. But then as the system pushes off towards the south, the rainfall threat tapers off eventually down to maybe 20 millimeters or so down here in southwestern Australia. So this isn't going to be just a coastal line event for the rainfall threats, but remains to be seen what the coastal impact exactly will be. But we do have a generalized idea at this time. Of course, Category 5 on this average temperature scale cannot be ruled out in the next 6 to 12 hours, maybe even beyond that, probably. I think we've got Jamori.
Yeah, I'm trying to present my screen. It's just, I haven't done it on this computer yet, so it's just taking a bit.
Another thing to note is that like a lot of Australian cyclones, when they move inland into Australia, they take a lot longer to weaken than most other places in the world due to like brown ocean and things like that. So rainfall would especially be a great concern for this storm due to that. If it's like keeps sustaining.
Definitely. Okay, so I have the microwave imagery pulled up now.
This shows Discord.
Yeah, oh, it still just shows it?
It's just Discord.
Okay, here, let me change it. I don't know why this is not working.
Someone is reporting that the Bureau of Meteorology are running with winds of 115 miles per hour, 100 knots, 10 minutes sustained winds, and a pressure of 941, apparently. That might be the latest from the Bureau of Meteorology. Obviously, that is a high-end Category 4 on the Australian scale. I believe 120 miles per hour is Category 5. So that is bearing down on Category 5 on the Australian scale. And it's clearly a very dangerous storm. I'd be really interested to see their forecast count, to see if they're still forecasting a landfall on Port Hedland. I'd be really interested to see that. We got your screen now, Maury.
Yes, so this is the microwave imagery of Zelia currently. You can see that there is some bands already moving on to land. Of course, it is in close proximity to land. You can see some of them probably are producing high rainfall rates. Microwave imagery doesn't show us all that, but like it can show like the stronger parts of a storm. So we can see that the storm is continuing to deepen in terms of its eye, and it latest frames, it does look like it might have shifted slightly away from the coast, but that's not going to happen for long, most likely. It's probably going to turn.
It might turn to the west a bit, but then they'll start heading more towards the south again.
Yeah, I'm aware that's what is forecast.
We'll stick with your screen here for just a minute, Maury, as I'm working on some stuff behind the scenes at the moment, trying to get some other imagery up here. I did see a question or a comment saying, in the most extreme cases, I think that this storm could reach 185 miles per hour. I think that's the absolute maximum, but what do you guys think? I would agree with that for an absolute maximum. Although for the storm to actually reach that intensity, I think it's a little bit of a stretch at this point.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's running out of time. But
I think it comes down to the sea surface temperatures. I got to see the sea surface temperatures, and that's not the only factor, of course.
Well,
but
mainly the oceanic heat content, I would say.
yeah, the oceanic heat content. I gotta see the oceanic.
It's very
heat
deep
content.
in this area.
Let me see if I can find what it looks like.
But yes, I would definitely say that 185 miles per hour, not likely, but potentially within the realm of possibility.
Right, we've got some new imagery here. Good morning to Cyclone Zelia, or Zelia. Good morning. Wow, look at that imagery.
Is that what the thing's
Uh,
called? The
Visible
image?
imagery.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is over some pretty warm waters right now. It does look like they're going to get even warmer closer to the coast, so I think maybe we could see a slight intensification right as it approaches landfall. I do think it might maybe slightly weaken towards landfall, but that's 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 an uncertainty at this point. I think we still can see some weakening with that landfall.
In the recent past, weakening before landfall has been a difficult thing to forecast. We thought that was going to happen with Helene. It did not happen. I
Yeah,
mean, it's really anyone's guess at this point.
I
Well,
know, and
these kind of situations where you have a storm really close to land, and it still has at least a day and a half, if not longer, to go until landfall. It's a bit hard to forecast because you've got this kind of situation where a storm could undergo an Iowa replacement cycle at any time, and that is going to significantly alter both the landfall location because it makes the eye unstable, and it's going to also significantly decrease your confidence in the landfall intensity, because that, of course, is going to have drastic changes on the intensity. Most of the time, 99% of the time, an Iowa replacement cycle, whenever it takes its place, it weakens a storm. The only time that I've seen a storm intensify through an Iowa replacement cycle is Trammy back in 2018 in the Western Pacific. Beautiful storm. If you have not seen the imagery on that one, go and look at that. Trust me. But regarding Zelia,
I
and
do
I
want to
will.
make another.
Hang on one second. Sorry, I apologize. But regarding Zelia, it's a bit of an interesting case because, when do we see this Iowa replacement cycle begin? And if it does begin, if there even is one, how long does it last, and what will the storm be whenever it comes out of the Iowa replacement cycle? What will the storm structure be? We don't know at this time, and that's unfortunate that we don't.
It's really just one of those things that, with our current technology, is. Finish my sentence for me.
It does.
not
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah, it's not really possible at the time.
What I am a little bit worried about is because there is a pocket of warmer waters right by the coast, so I'm unsure how that would affect the storm. I know land interaction would cause some weakening, but I'm unsure how much weakening that would be since the temperatures are so warm close to the coast.
Of course, we've got these warm waters of 31 to 32 degrees Celsius right underneath the storm. I know that a lot of people are asking about the ocean heat content. I don't know if we have a graphic about that, but I do know that the ocean heat content is pretty significant for Western Australia as it stands right now. So it's if there's one spot for this storm to be on top of, or basically parked right on top of, that has really good sea surface temperatures and really good ocean heat content, it's where it is right now. So if you do have any comments or questions, you can send us down in the comment section down below. Be sure to tag us at Force13. It'll light up nice and bright and orange for us to answer. So, of course, the time to prepare for the storm is quickly running out. Of course, we still do have a day and a half left until landfall. That's when the storm crosses the coast. But, of course, look at the storm. I mean, it is a massive storm. It is not just going to take up, just this little speck of coastline here as this imagery loads. I'll go on here. But it's not going to be just a little thing that's going to happen. That's going to be just a coastal event. No, this is going to stretch to inland areas as well. You've got multiple towns and cities and even small villages in the inland areas that are still going to be impacted by this. And, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be impacted by this storm. So even if you are not in Port Hedland, even if you're not in Karatha, if you're in inland locations, such as, I'll just list them off here on the map, Marble Bar, Hillside Station, amongst other locations, you're still going to be impacted by this storm. You've got the rainfall threat. You've got even some winds which could gust up to 75 to 80 miles per hour, if not higher, in these inland areas, given that this area out here is nothing but desert out here. It is nothing but flat desert out here. And it's going to weaken the storm a little bit slower than what we would normally see. So you still got that threat, yeah. Go ahead.
Someone in chat just said that Port Helden is a big mining port.
It is.
So a lot of the inland towns can get battered pretty badly.
I'm trying to get the cloud tops of Zelia at the moment. Just hold by for a second.
Yeah, I know the website does take a little bit to load. But here the storm in the latest frames, I want to say, Zeta, is actually moving off towards the northwest. What do you think about that?
What'd you say? Sorry.
You're fine. In the latest satellite imagery frames, it does appear that the storm is moving off towards the northwest. What do you think about that?
Oh. I definitely wasn't expecting that, because, generally in the southern hemisphere, they don't really tend to move that way that much, especially with its current track. It wasn't really supposed to turn northward again. It was more supposed to move more of a west-southwesterly direction and then curve back to the south. So
if I had to guess, it's probably just a wobble. If I had to guess,
it might be. Yeah, that's probably what it is.
Probably.
Sorry about that.
Let me see the laptops.
The 0Z JTWC Dvorak fixes out, and they fixed T6.0, or winds of 130 miles per hour. I don't see how they've gone and done that. Don't tell me that they're actually going to run with 130 miles per hour for top of the hour, Zeta. If they do, that is far too low.
Yeah.
What do they have it as currently?
100 miles per hour, low Cat 2.
That's minimal Cat 2.
Yeah. Which is 50 miles per hour lower than what we have.
I mean, at least 130 miles per hour would be an improvement, but that's not saying much.
Yeah. It has been hovering in the T7.0 area.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at Dvorak imagery, you can definitely see that structure to it that would indicate, like, something close to T7.0. I'm not sure why they aren't picking up on that. I think maybe just the Dvorak products are different for them or something. Or maybe they're the same. I'm unsure exactly how it works, but I think that they're just looking at it from a different... Like, we all look at it from a different perspective. They're just looking at it from a different perspective. So.
Of course, the JTWC's advisory, the latest forecast, or assessment, I should say, of the intensity of 100 miles per hour was, of course, 7 hours ago. So that's way out of date. And even then, whenever it was at that point, it still was of the satellite appearance still was a lot better than what it is now. So it remains to be seen what the storm will peak at and what it will make landfall at. It's got a long time. Well, I said long time. It's got about a day and a half at least until landfall, despite it being so close to the coastline. I can't really say the last time that we've had a storm like this, which has moved this slowly and meandered off the coastline.
I mean, I currently can't think of anything.
I know that a lot of people are comparing this storm to Cyclone Ilsa back in 2021, was it?
2023.
2022, you said?
2023.
Oh, 2023. Of course, that was in
It
April.
was in the 2022 to 23 season.
Yeah.
Of course, that was in April 2023, and that was much different than this storm. Ilsa was moving much quicker than this storm was. Pretty similar landfall location, though, has to be said. I think it was down in these regions over here, towards the southeast of the storm. But still a pretty similar intensity to what the storm is now. At the time of landfall, it had weakened down from its Category 5 peak, but still was a Category 4 at landfall, and didn't really do a whole lot, thankfully, considering that these areas of Western Australia are very sparsely populated. So let's hope that this storm stays away from any populated areas, and is basically one for the fishes, let's hope.
Yeah.
So, what do you think the probability of this making landfall in Port Hedland is right now? Is that low?
Well, if you believe the Bureau, I mean, that they're forecasting a landfall pretty much directly over Port Hedland. But me personally, I would only put it at maybe 50-60% chance. I mean, obviously that's still significant, but you know, that's not really of any high certainty either, because you've got the JGWC forecasting a landfall towards the southwest of Port Hedland. You got the Bureau forecasting one right over, and the models don't even know what's going to make landfall at.
Yeah, I mean,
Of
its
course.
intensity could definitely impact it.
And of course, that one city is just a tiny little pinpoint.
Yep, of course. You know, that's just a tiny little dot on a big blue marble that we're on.
Mm-hmm.
What about the probability of this making landfall in Karratha?
Much lower. Much lower.
Okay, so I get the consensus. This is like supposed to move directly south of where it is now. We're slightly south-southwest.
Yes. It's going to move... Basically, it's going to move either due west for about 12 hours or so, then turn south, or it might move westwards for the next 6 hours and then turn south. It's still a little bit of a question about where it goes and at what intensity. And regarding Iowa poison cycles, there's still a lot of uncertainty with those kind of values. And it all depends on the timing of when those two all come together. At what point the storm will make landfall and at what intensity. We don't know that just yet. But one thing is for certain. Landfall's coming. We need to prepare for it now. Do not wait. The time to prepare is running out. And that's even with very heavy rainfall already ongoing on these many coastal areas, even with the storm parked just offshore.
And you know, there is the off chance that, I mean, soon it will become too late, because attempting travel by a certain point will put you at even greater risk of being affected by the cyclone.
Absolutely. You know, it gets to a point, eventually whenever the storm will be making landfall, that you want to stop preparing for the storm at that point, just hunker on down. I mean, I would trust pretty much anyone in Port Hedland. If you can evacuate, honestly, get out of there. Don't take the chance. I mean, prepare your house, prepare your belongings, and get out of there. Don't take the chance with these kind of things. We say this all the time with American landfalling hurricanes, and it is the exact same here. If you can get out of harm's way, do so. Honestly, regardless of what nation you're in, regardless of your situation, if you can get yourself out of harm's way safely, do it. Honestly, it will save your life.
100% it will.
One problem with that, though, unsure about the road systems here. I'm looking at the map now. There is a single road that goes away from the cyclone, but I'm just worried that would have like a lot of traffic on it if all people are evacuating on that single road.
I'm not entirely sure. It makes
I mean, it depends how many people are in Port Hedland.
It's not a particularly large town. I think Port Hedland has a population of around 10 to 20,000, I believe. I'm gonna look it up.
Oh, I mean,
It's not a big town. 15,000. So it's not terribly big. We've seen much bigger population centers impacted by tropical cyclones, especially in the past year or so. The biggest population center to get a big hit from tropical cyclone in the past few years immediately comes to my mind is Acapulco in Mexico due to Hurricane Otis in 2023. Thankfully, it's not impacting anywhere like Brisbane, Melbourne, Perth, or Sydney. Thankfully, those population centers are going to be far away from the storm and are really going to be seeing anything regarding this storm.
yeah.
Remains to be seen what both the Joint Typhoon Warning Center and the Bureau of Meteorology will be going with. The Bureau does say that their next advisory will be issued, their full advisory will be issued by 1:30Z, which is in about an hour and a half. So that'll be by the time that we're off air. But if they do make any drastic calls, you'll know on our social media outlets, which you can stay tuned. We're pretty much everywhere at this point. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, the likes of that. I should call it Twitter. It's not. I mean, some people call it X, people call it Twitter, but you get the idea. Be sure to search us on there at Force18. Give us a follow, subscribe, like, the usual stuff. Be sure to do that and stay up to date on the tropics. But of course, regarding Cyclone Zelia, while we're still here, be sure to send us in comments down in the comment section down below. Once again, tag us at Force13. It'll light up nice and bright and orange for us to answer your question in due course. I would still say that the storm is still not a Category 5 just yet, but it is pretty close. Would I say that we could bump the wind speed up to 155 miles per hour for top of the hour? I'm not entirely sure on that. What do you think about that, Zeta and Maury?
Big maybe. We'll have
I
to
mean,
see.
I'm looking at the eye structure right now, and honestly, it's kind of stabilized. I haven't really, I don't know how to get like the temperature of the eye, but I would imagine that's stabilized too. So I'm not really sure. I mean, I think we could keep it at 150 miles per hour, but it really all depends on the eye structure and how the temperature of the eye is going.
We probably could bump it up.
I'm
one
not
thing's
saying
for
we
certain,
couldn't.
though, at least for me, the intensification rates that we've been seeing over the last 12, 18 hours is slowing down.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's due maybe to the storm. I'm not
Approaching
entirely
land.
sure what it's due to, but maybe it's due to land interaction.
As it gets closer to land, the waters will get shallower and the oceanic heat content will decrease.
Yeah, so that's probably the reason.
Yeah, but at that point, the storm is going to be basically making landfall. Though it's going to be too late for the storm for that kind of stuff. Shallow waters and lesser ocean heat content to really do anything to the storm.
Oh, I guess that's because there's like a deep cutoff point between like shallower waters and deeper waters here.
Do you think that it would be possible, using our remaining minutes, that we could put some focus on other systems?
We'll touch on everything here briefly before we go, Zeta, but to take some questions here while we can. Someone's asking us, I've seen some people talk about a 175 mile per hour landfall. What is the chance of that? Well, first off, 175 miles per hour would be my forecast peak at the moment. I would probably place that with medium confidence. I wouldn't be too confident in it, though, unfortunately. But maybe for the landfall intensity, absolutely not. You've got a landfall still at least a day and a half away. The storm is I mean, with that small of an eye and with this kind of structure, it's bound to undergo some significant change by then. I mean, obviously, there's been some storms that have maintained the same appearance for 2 or more days without going through an ionophilization cycle, but that is a sheer miracle for the storm to not even do that. 95% of the storms within a day and a half to go until landfall at this intensity will undergo some sort of ionophilization cycle prior to landfall. Would not surprise me that the storm undergoes one. It's just a question of when. And we don't know the answer to that right now. We don't know the answer to what the storm will look like even 12 to 24 hours from now. Now,
I mean, you did say earlier that that it might be trying to start an ionophilization cycle.
Yeah, it might be trying to. It might be in the very early stages of one. But at this point, regarding landfall intensity, I would probably only forecast a landfall intensity of maybe 150 miles per hour for landfall. Of course, that is with a lower uncertainty value than normal.
I definitely wouldn't say only for 150 miles per hour.
Yeah.
It's still extremely dangerous.
Yeah, still extremely dangerous, but it's only a 10-mile-per-hour difference between a Category 5 and a Category 4. I mean, it doesn't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
Someone's asking us, why do hurricane trackers run by 5 if Category 2 is 96 miles per hour? So the reason that we round up is because the officials do. It's a lot simpler to just give a 5-mile-per-hour rounded value to the generalized public instead of giving an exact value. We want to make things as simple as possible for the generalized public to view. Obviously, weather trackers such as ourselves can go more in depth. They can get exact wind field data for everything, the likes of that. But for the generalized public, all that they want is a number ending in 5 or 0 for the wind speed. It just makes things a lot more simpler.
It does.
And another question regarding storm surge. I unfortunately don't have really any data regarding the storm surge at this time. I did see that Jason had some storm surge data that was saying that some coastal areas of Port Hedland could be underwater. But overall, the city as a whole, I think, might get some storm surge threats regarding the storm. So obviously there is that threat, but I don't think that things should be too bad. It's not gonna be nothing like like a 25-foot storm surge, nothing like that at all. But it's still gonna be significant, nonetheless. And I don't want to downplay that at all.
I did see a JTWC forecast that said max wave height of 26 feet from earlier.
But of course, that's over water, of course.
Yeah.
So we're unsure about that. We're unsure about if it will submerge some communities, but I honestly don't really think so, because this system, it might cause some flooding issues.
Okay, we've got some news here. We've got the new forecast track map from the Bureau of Meteorology. Here is their latest forecast track. They've made a big shift towards the west. They are no longer forecasting a landfall over Port Hedland, thank God. They are forecasting a landfall off towards the west. Still, they've moved the landfall time a little bit further in the future than originally forecasted. Still forecasted to be a Category 5 landfall. The intensity forecast has not changed though regarding their forecast. Still forecasting 110 knots, 10 minutes sustained winds, which would be a Category 5 on the Australian scale. Thankfully, pulling the wind field as well further back away from Port Hedland. So the more west the storm goes, good. But it gets a little bit more towards Karratha and Webb Creek. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Now, if it can avoid all the population areas altogether, I'd be very, very happy.
Pretty much threads the needle right between them, Karratha and Port Hedland, by this current forecast.
Absolutely. I don't think that the warning area has changed. much. I don't think so. I don't believe so. I apologize about the background noise. That's my kitten Storm. I apologize about that.
I didn't hear him.
No, I don't think any of the cyclone warnings have changed at this point.
Yeah, I don't think.
So it remains the same warning zone from Bidia and Danga to Dampier, including Port Headland, Karatha, and Dampier, extending inland to Marble Bar. A cyclone watch zone from Dampier to Marty, and inland areas to Nulligan and Tom Price.
I see why people are comparing this to Ilsa. Like, I know it's very different, but like, I think the warnings, I do remember hearing like the warnings went up to Marble Bar with Ilsa.
I see what they've done. So they've actually made a watch change this update. They've brought it inland to Tom Price. It wasn't inland before, but now it is. So bringing it further inland as the storm is going to move inland. And of course, you know, the storm isn't going to just stop at the coastline. It's going to keep going inside. It's inland, I should say.
Which makes sense. I mean, it'll probably still be fairly strong, even like a few miles inland, or like up to probably around 100 miles inland.
Now we are scheduled to go off the air at top of the hour, but don't worry, we aren't going anywhere just yet. I do want to wait until the 0Z ATCF comes out. I do want to see what the Joint Typhoon Warning Center will say for their advisory, or for their upcoming advisory at 3Z. Now, of course, the Bureau did just go with 10 minutes sustained winds of 115 miles per hour and a pressure of 941 millibars. It's better than the JTWC's estimate, but the wind speed estimate, I would say, probably still needs to be bumped up a fair bit. I would probably say that this is already a Category 5 on the Australian scale.
Most likely it is. Where's Category 5 on the Australian scale in 1 minute winds?
I believe it starts at 105 knots. 110 maybe. That generalized area. So we're right off the cusp of it.
Mm-hmm.
So while we wait on the ATCF update, if you do have any comments or questions, you can send those down to the comment section down below. Be sure to tag us at Force13 in due course. It'll light up nice and bright and orange for us to answer in due course. So, of course, the Bureau of Meteorology, if you missed it, did issue a brand new track map. They bring the cyclone watch areas inland towards Tom Price. But other than that, they didn't change anything regarding the watches or warnings besides, of course, the watch inland to Tom Price once again.
Let me just see how far inland Tom Price is.
It's pretty far inland. It's due south of Karatha.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, I see it. Yeah, that's definitely much further inland than Marble Bar. That's near Marigini National Park.
Yeah, Tom Price is much more inland than Marble Bar is. Both either way are under threat for this storm. You know, just because of that, they're not going to get the worst winds doesn't mean that they're out of danger at all. They're still going to get a very heavy rainfall threat with this storm. You know, the usual likes of a tropical cyclone impact. That's going to happen with this storm as it pushes off towards the south here. You know, this isn't going to be just a coastal event, as I said earlier. This is going to be an inland threat too. You know, you're going to get some damaging wind gusts. You're obviously going to get the heavy rainfall threat, which could lead to flash flooding in areas. We're not going to be seeing too high of a mudslide or landslide threat, given that the areas impacted or in the path of the storm are pretty flat, given that this is basically nothing but desert out here in Western Australia. So thankfully, there's not too much in terms of impacts for the storm to really deal on life and property. Of course, we do have the cities of Port Hedland and Karatha in the path. Let's hope that they do okay, and let's hope that residents there are preparing adequately for this dangerous storm. And let's hope that everyone comes out okay whenever the storm is said and done. So any comments on the latest satellite appearance at all, Zeta or Mori?
I'm
It looks interesting. I did just see a new frame. It does maybe look like the eye is beginning to wobble less. I'm not sure what that indicates.
We've got the ATCF fix for Zelia, which is over here. You can see it over there. Looking very, very horrible as it pushes off towards the south. The JTWC did forecast, or did say that this storm briefly did regain hurricane force winds, with winds of 75 miles per hour. The 0Z estimate from them has brought it down to 70 miles per hour, 985 millibars. So that is down to a high-end tropical storm on the Southwest Simpson wind scale. Once again, 70 miles per hour, 985 millibars from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. Still waiting on everything regarding Zelia, though.
very
Zelia,
ill-looking storm that has become Talia.
It's never really looked good at any part during its life. Its partner in
Except
crime,
for
as
the
I've been
beginning.
calling it, Vince, looked way better than
And we thought that the other way around was going to happen. We thought that Talia was going to be the dominant system. And it ended up being Vince instead.
Okay, I need to see if this is true, because... Just a minute. Okay, we've got... Okay, disregard. Disregard. I apologize.
It's okay.
Huh?
But yeah, I did notice I was seeing like a little less of a wobble from the storm. I think that shift to the northwest is starting to cancel out a little bit. That probably was just a wobble.
The generalized movement, though, for the storm will be off towards the west and then eventually off towards the south. That will be the generalized movement eventually for the storm. It's taking its time, and it's meandering is the correct word I'm looking for, in the area towards the north of Port Hedland. It's going to be a very long next 2 to 3 days for Port Hedland and Karatha. We'll just basically prepare adequately and stay safe, and we'll get through this eventually. It's going to be once again a very long 2 to 3 days for both of these cities, as the storm is basically sitting right offshore. It kind of reminds me of Dorian a little bit back in 2019, where basically that storm was just sitting over the northern islands of the Bahamas for 2 to 3 days. You know, it was just sitting there, just pounding them. Thankfully, the storm isn't stalling over land. Thankfully, let's be thankful that it's not doing that at all.
That'd be terrible. Let me check.
And multiple people are reporting that the 0Z ATCF for Zelia, I don't know, I might have on the pronunciation, is in. I'm not seeing anything on it just yet. I still have 18Z on my end.
I don't see it either.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything on regarding the 0Z ATCF regarding Zelia just yet. Zelia. How even do you actually pronounce its name accurately?
Let me look it up. It is... There's multiple sources.
Just check the Bureau's website. I should have it. Okay, chat is telling me Zelia.
I think that's it.
That would be my guess.
Yeah.
Would probably be Zelia. I have to say,
There's people who say Zelia, Zelia. There's like 3 different pronunciations I'm finding.
I do have to say, if the storm does end up reaching Category 5 officially from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center on the Safford-Simpson Hurricane Wind Scale, I'm pretty sure it will be the first Z-named Category 5 ever in the world. I'm pretty sure.
Huh.
I know that there's plenty of unofficial Z-named Category 5s. One that immediately comes to mind is Cyclone, I believe it's Zelda in 1994, or Typhoon Zelda, I should say, because it's in the Western Pacific. That one was probably quite a strong Category 5 at that. Of course, that's unofficial. The JWC has it down, I believe, as a Category 4. But Blues are pointing out Zeb. Yep. I forgot about Zeb.
Zeb.
Wait.
Zeb and Zoe. Yep. I forgot about that. I apologize. So this would be at least number 3. At least.
At least number 3.
I think it would be the first in the Australian region.
Yes, I do
Was
believe it would
Zoe
be
in
that.
the Australian region?
No, Zoe was entirely in the South Pacific.
Oh.
But yeah, we're just holding out here at this point until the 0Z ATCF comes out with the latest from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center regarding Cyclone Zelia, stalling towards the north of Port Hedland. A bit of uncertain movements right now. Our latest estimate, about an hour ago, has it with winds of 150 miles per hour and a pressure of 934 millibars. I would probably not differ very much from that estimate at this time. Given the satellite appearance and given some uncertainty with those values regarding the latest satellite frames. We might be able to bump it up to 155 miles per hour at this past top of the hour. I'll have to review some data and make a call based upon the latest satellite imagery. Still waiting on the latest from the Georgia Typhoon Warning Center. But in the meantime, if you do have any comments or questions, you can send those down in the comment section down below. Be sure to tag us at Fort13. It'll light up nice and bright and orange for us in due course. Still getting multiple satellite fixes that are now also fixing T7.0, which on the Dvorak scale would correspond to winds of 160 miles per hour, 140 knots. Category 5 on the Safford-Simpson Hurricane wind scale. That's just one intensity estimate from one source, and not one that should be taken with absolute value and nothing else blended into it. Someone is asking me that they have a friend telling me that it's going to be 195 mile per hour at landfall. Certainly not.
Yeah, I don't think that's possible.
I know a certain someone who might think that. Not name dropping anyone.
But I really do hope that this wait that we're waiting on the Joint Typhoon Warning Center here, I do hope that this wait is worth it. I do hope that they are taking their time to look over all data possible. Here's their latest forecast cone. I do hope that they are looking over all possible data and are making a very good call for their 0Z intensity estimate. Of course, their previous intensity estimate for 18Z, which is now 7 hours ago, had it with winds of 100 miles per hour. That was painfully low at the time, and obviously is now well out of date by now.
For sure.
once again, if you do have any comments or questions, you send those down in the comment section down below. Be sure to, and we'll be able to answer those in due course. I'm not sure if you're able to have a look for me, Zeta, but are we seeing anything on
Oh, I'm
radar
actually looking.
on radar regarding an owl poison cycle?
I don't really have the knowledge for that just yet.
Oh, I
I'm going to
apologize.
look.
I can take a look. But actually, based on like prior knowledge, not really seeing much personally. Not really seeing like anything like, like cutting into the storm, if you know what I mean.
Right, still nothing from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. I will say the latest eye temperature, based on an imagery about 10 till top of the hour, past top of the hour, or the past top hour, so basically from 0050Z, the eye temperature is now in the positives, up to 3.7 degrees Celsius. And that eye temperature now being in the positives is a pretty major step towards the storm officially getting a Category 5 rating. I do think that the storm will get it at some point. It's just a question of when. And of course, if the storm undergoes an Iowa poison cycle any time within the next few hours, really, or 12 hours or so, that could prevent the JTWC from calling Category 5.
Hmm. Might take a look at the forecast model, seeing if they want any new cyclones in a long range. Seems like GFS has a tropical low forming in the Western Australian region at hour 180, and it goes out into the Indian Ocean. Doesn't seem too terribly strong, without affecting any land area.
Nothing yet from the JTWC, but
No.
if they do issue anything, you'll hear it from us first.
South Pacific and the long GFS for the South Pacific really gets things cranking, it seems.
On that front to the near and east of Fiji.
Yeah.
Yep, I figured that. I figured it would. There's going to be a just like what we've been having with the past few systems in the South Pacific. There is there's a frontal event that's kind of going on where we have multiple low pressures that some do and some don't develop into tropical cyclones, and they sort of all ride a front. We just had that in the South Pacific, and these kind of things happen all the time.
Yeah. There's like GFS wants like 3 at the same time. One of them gets all the way down to 985 millibars, which isn't too strong. But in more recent years, the South Pacific hasn't performed as well as it used to back in like the 1980s and 90s. Anywhere else?
So once again, if you do have any comments or questions, you can send us down in the comment section down below. Ask us in due course, and we'll be able to answer them. Be sure whenever you do comment that you tag us at Force13. It'll light up nice and bright and orange for us in due course.
Nothing showing up for the South Atlantic at this time on the TFS. You can check the Euro. Oh, Euro. Euro kind of wants something. 168 hours out.
Okay, ATCF is out. 130 miles per hour, 944 millibars. That is the latest from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. 130 miles per hour, 944 millibars. It's better than 100 miles per hour, but I would still say it's probably still a little bit too low.
Yeah, definitely underwhelming. Yeah.
Still not a bad estimate from them. I'll give it to them. It's better, but it's still too low.
Yeah.
Right then, with that being out of the way, we are going to be taking our leave here. We'll have more updates on this dangerous storm over the next few days as it pushes off towards the south. I'm not sure if we're going to be having a video update regarding this storm tonight if it does reach Category 5 status, but I imagine we'll be having one probably tomorrow if the storm does reach that status. More live streams on the way, and if this storm does make a powerful landfall, we'll be there to cover it. Stay safe, and be sure to stay tuned to social media outlets for the latest information. Stay safe, and have a good night.
Have a good night.